Well, as you saw in my recent video where I showed some of the items that I've brought back as souvenirs from some of my trips to Europe, paintings and whatever, there were several people that said they would like to see more things like that. Well, that was my entire art collection. I can't really carry on with that, but I thought you might be interested in the story behind some of the trips that I took. And so that's what this is all about. The first trip that I'm going to talk about anyway was the one of my HelpX trips, helpx.net, if you want to have a look at what that's all about. Basically, the membership of HelpX advertise their farms or B&Bs or whatever they're wanting help with. And for working half days, 5 days a week, you get room and board for free and get the experience of living with a native family and what's going on. So the first one here is in Velletri. Velletri is about 40 kilometers south of Rome. Actually, it's on the Appian Way. Old Roman Appian Way goes through Velletri. The first farm was called Chez, and what you're looking at here is something very unique I've never seen before or since. In one corner of the kitchen countertop was a hearth, and the lady of the house, Paola, which you'll see a picture of here shortly, every time they had company, she would start a fire in it and rake the coals over to toast bread to make bruschetta, and then she would also barbecue steaks on the grill. They knew that I was a vegetarian, so I didn't have steaks. She always, every time this happened, she would get a special kind of cheese that can be barbecued, it can be grilled. About an inch thick slice of this cheese. It was delicious, but I didn't get the beef, but the bruschetta and the cheese were wonderful. The farm didn't have any vines, but the next door neighbor had a vineyard. And I remember Paola telling me that she would never be drinking their wine because she knows that they use every chemical known to man on the stuff. Well, my main work while I was on this farm was not too difficult. I planted a number of things, transplanted a number of things, and did a lot of pruning and whatever of their olive trees. They had their own olive trees. I got to visit some wonderful garden centers, and that's what these pictures are. I didn't get to buy that olive tree, by the way, or any of the topiary, but I pruned olive trees, like I said. They had a hedge made of bay laurel, bay leaves, and I pruned it some, but I also extended it. We bought a number of new bay laurel plants and extended it. They wanted it as a screen against their next door neighbor who had a particularly ugly looking hen yard. But other than that, I did take care of two donkeys. There'll be a story about that coming up shortly. Just some views of Velletri in the distance taken from the farm, and then a few pictures that I took around the town of Velletri one of the times that I was in town. What I was going to say about the pruning, though, if you have never had a bonfire made out of olive tree branches and bay laurel branches, you are in for a big surprise if you ever get the opportunity. You just touch a match to it and it goes up like you had soaked it in gasoline. I suppose because the olive branches and leaves also have olive oil in them, but why the bay laurel is so flammable, I don't know, but it certainly is. I ate a lot of artichokes while I was there and loved them. Many different ways that they were served. They were delicious. It was too early in Velletri for artichokes. Those are the plants there just starting to grow nicely, but there weren't any artichokes on them yet. But they were coming up fresh from Sicily, coming up north from Sicily, so we ate a lot of them. She wanted to know if I could transplant some of the little ones. There were like little pups or whatever that come up next to them. And she said she had been told by her next-door neighbor, that the time to do that was in the middle of the summer, and I stopped her right there. I said, no, you wouldn't want to be digging up and transplanting anything in the middle of the heat of summers in Italy. She said, that's what I thought. She said, these people aren't really being very helpful to me. I don't know how long they had been living on the farm. It wasn't a family inherited farm anyway. They had bought it and moved to it in recent years. But anyway, these now are the little ones that I transplanted for them. A whole new row of artichokes, and they would wilt every morning, and I would water them again, and they'd perk up in the afternoon, and by the time I left, they were growing beautifully. As promised, here comes the story of the donkeys, Bella and Nutella. They were basically just the children's pets. They weren't used for any purpose on the farm. And I had watched somebody every morning for a few days moving them from the paddock where they spent the night down to a pasture. So I just decided that's something that I would take over and do for myself. I would hear them even before I had my breakfast. They would start bellowing because they wanted somebody to move them to the pasture. So I did it several days in a row, no problem. They also had a black dog, which will show up here in one of these photographs shortly. And it played with the donkeys all day. It would go out and chase the donkeys around the pasture, and then the donkeys would turn around and chase the dog around the pasture, and both animals enjoyed it, a lot of fun. But the dog was not supposed to be out when I was moving the donkeys, and one of the children let the dog out, and I didn't realize it. It came up behind me and barked, and of course the donkeys took off, and I was holding them by their halters. I was drugged down a hill. I could have let go and I wouldn't have been hurt, but we weren't in the pasture yet, and I was scared that they would run down the long driveway onto the highway and the children's donkeys would be killed in traffic. So I hung on as long as I could, and then I had to let go. I ended up having to go see an orthopedic surgeon who came from Velletri from Rome. I just happened to find out that he did a monthly visit, I guess. It wasn't anything terribly serious, but I did have to have knee surgery when I got back home. I had a torn cartilage or something in my knee. But they were so upset and worried. They thought for sure I was going to be suing them, I think. And I finally got them convinced that, as far as I'm concerned, the accident was my fault. I should have let the donkeys go. So I'm not going to be suing you. When I got back home, I had to go have an MRI and have arthroscopic surgery on my knee, but it didn't amount to that big of a deal, I guess, and I really didn't blame that on the children or the dog or anything. I should have just let go of the halters when I had the chance. Just some pictures that I took around the farm. These first couple of them are, I guess it would have been a barn. They had restored half of it and wanted to restore the rest of it and have a restaurant. In my opinion, Paola was a gourmet chef. Everything that she served was just incredible. However, there is still a lot of corrupt politicians in Italy, so at least at the municipal level. She went to the town office to get planning permission to restore it and turn it into a restaurant. And the guy who was in charge of that section of the town office said, no, that's all right, just go ahead and do it. We'll do the paperwork afterwards. And she said, I won't be doing that, because what that means is when I finish everything and get the restaurant up and running, he owns it. I'll have to be paying him off or he'll close me down. Some pictures of the main house. The balcony, that is my room and, ensuite bathroom and whatever. If you notice the tree just outside of that window, that's a kitchen window. And the next slide shows you what that tree is. It's a lemon tree. And to get a lemon, all she had to do was open the window and reach out and pick a lemon outside the kitchen window. Now that is convenience. No grocery store involved. Several different kinds of citrus trees. I made a mistake and ate an orange thinking it was just an ordinary orange. It was a horrible bitter thing, and she laughed at me and said, no, that's just one that's gone wild. But then I found the tangerine tree, and they were just incredible. This is the view from my balcony, looking down at that barn and the neighbor's vineyard. I'm Not sure what the other shrubs are, but they're on their property. Just a couple of more views of the house from the outside here. On one of my days off, I took the train and went further south down to Naples. I don't know who the guy on the horse is. If I knew, I've forgotten. But what you'll see coming up here is some of the buildings around Naples and the Bay of Naples, looking across at Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii, which I did not get to. But the story that I want to tell you is about my third encounter with a European pickpocket. I have had 2 encounters in Italy and 1 in Portugal. Well, I just arrived in Naples and was walking along the seafront, sort of. I had a small backpack on my back. Nothing of any great value in it, but of course my wallet was there and my passport and that sort of thing. I wouldn't want to lose any of it. The sun was behind me, and all of a sudden I could see a shadow of somebody who was walking behind me, and must have been quite close according to the shadow, and they were not making any effort to pass me. I hadn't felt a thing. So anyway, I swung around, and when I did, he took off and passed me and went rapidly down the road. I took the backpack off. He already had the pouch on the backpack unzippered, and that's where my passport was. Another few seconds and he would have had my passport, and I wouldn't have felt a thing. If it hadn't been for the sun in the direction that it was shining so that I saw his shadow, I never would have known he was there. Back in Velletri for the annual Camellia celebration or festival. I guess I haven't said this particular farm visit was in March, most of March in 2007. Velletri has an annual Camellia festival. And the camellias all bloom in March. I got to go to the fair, and there was a market there also, selling plants and whatever, things that I could not bring back home with me. But it was an enjoyable day, getting to see all the camellias in bloom. Just a few more pictures taken around Velletri. And this is a traffic circle with a fountain in the middle. I thought was very attractive, so obviously I had to photograph it, I guess. I think this is the town hall. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what that was. And this is a bell tower, not too far from the town hall. It was getting close to Easter, so a lot of the shops had chocolate on display. Padre Pio, now Saint Padre Pio, I guess. You find him everywhere in Europe. That statue almost looked like he was going to start moving. Well, these last few photographs are a restoration project in the town. They restored an old well, and I guess you would call it the wash house. This is where laundry used to be done prior to electricity and automatic washing machines and whatever. Nobody uses them anymore, I don't think, but I have seen them. I've seen them in France, Portugal, Spain, and these are in Italy. This one is in Italy, so they're everywhere, but they're restoring this one, I don't think so that it will be used, but just to preserve part of their history, and I suppose sort of a tourist attraction as well. Well, that concludes this video. If it has enough followers and people like it, I may do another one at some point. I've got one more farm that I worked on in Italy anyway. Thank you very much for watching.